Peace, this is Casabez coming again with another episode of The Black Present. Um, Again, I'm just happy to announce the upcoming activity we'll be having on our page. If you haven't already, go check us out on Facebook at One People Movie, facebook.com/One People Movie. Our website should be back up soon as well, onepeopleproject.org. And today we're going to be talking again about the Black present, meaning the present Black civilization, not the Black history, not ancient history, but the present Black civilization currently in Africa that's existing today, that's existing without having been conquered by European forces, by Chinese forces, by Arab forces, but Black civilization as it stands and has been standing since times immemorial, tens of thousands of years ago. Um, this culture, this civilization is what we have at accessible to us now, and I want to make sure that it's present in our minds. We are not in a hopeless civilization. We have a home, we have a culture, we have a civilization to go back to that belongs to us. That doesn't come at a price of having to submit under somebody else's domination in order for us to continue to exist. Today we're going to be talking about the meaning of the One People, this One People project that I embarked upon. Um, Starting in 2013, 2014, I started working on this documentary, and it turned into a whole project because I saw that there was so much really there was to show that couldn't be fit just in one documentary. Um, so we'll start there. I wanted to talk about the meaning, really the inspiration for what One People means. And to get to that, I have to acknowledge my spiritual master, Master Naba Lamuso Moro Denibig, or otherwise just known as Master Naba or the Makaru. Um, Master Naba was the founder of the Earth Center and the founder of the Earth Center's spiritual pilgrimages to Merita. To say Merita is really the traditional hieroglyphic word for Africa, which means the beloved land. Um, this spiritual pilgrimage was really so powerful to me because it's really, I mean, I don't really know of other groups that have been founded by high priests from Africa who are now leading groups into Africa, into traditional villages to witness traditional ceremonies, to visit traditional kings, to uh, really even come and bring themselves back and put themselves back into traditional Black culture, to the point where now many students of Master Naba are now, if they haven't already, they're in the process of making moves back to West Africa to live and to really learn how to be Black, um, according to how our ancestors have, defined it, not according to how other people have defined it for us and taught us in their schools. Um, so more on that later. But what I wanted to talk about was the inspiration that came from my first time on one of these pilgrimages, where I was fortunate enough to be there when Master Naba hosted it. It was the last time before he made his transition and passed away. Um, so in 2007, he led a small group of us from the U.S. and he also had moved back to Africa at the time, so he had opened the Ouagadougou Earth Center, so he had his students from there. He also had we were in his village, and he was also with many of his brothers and sisters, his uh, what you could say his siblings' children, which also are considered traditionally to be his children. So then you would say he came and he brought us while, it was a day like any other day. Basically, we had been sitting under the tree um, outside the compound of the village, where we sat pretty much every afternoon. And we spent a lot of time under those trees, basically sitting, talking, playing cards, sharing stories, learning at the feet of our master. And then as time would pass, we would have to move the mats as the sun hit the spot where we were sitting. Then we would have to move the mats still in the shade. So that was, that was our day. So on this particular day, he gathered us together for a group photo, and he said, for the first time, he said, this will be historic. For the first time, we're coming together as one people. And for me, that's something that's been a point of meditation because, you know, when someone says that you're making history, that you're a part of history, you really want to understand what does that mean. And, through my meditation, this is what I came to, is that, you know, it's not just that we're a group of people coming together. That's not what makes it historic. But really, to understand it, you have to really, let's say, he was the one to also explain to us what it means to be a people. So any group of people coming together is not just a people. You could call it a group, you could call it an association, you could call it whatever you want to call it, but it doesn't make it a people. Just like when you hear about a people, you might say, the Navajo people, the Comanche people, the Xhosa people, uh, whichever kind of people. You might talk about the Chinese people, the Indian people. What makes them a people is a level of cohesion between them, that they share values, that they share principles, that they share cultural norms, ceremonies. When you say marriage, what does that mean? When you say love, what does that mean? When you say um, how you're supposed to raise your children, how do you do that? That's what makes a people a people. So you have to come together to be a people based on some principles. And I think it's an important note because nowadays, when we talk about black people here in the United States, um, there's not that much that's really making us a people, because the values, the culture, the principles that maybe our communities once had once upon a time, that has been, gradually eroded. It's almost like cutting the branch off of a tree. You'll see that branch looks very, very much the same as it once did. But without being connected to the bigger tree, you'll see slowly the leaves will wilt, they'll fall off, the uh, the branch itself will start to turn hard and wither and brittle, and and then it'll start to disintegrate and turn back into the soil that it came from. So if you could look at black communities, maybe the the ones who were captured from Africa and brought over here held on for some time, as long as they could, to many of their cultural principles. And you can see that there's some elements of the culture that have been preserved, but gradually over time things have been changing. The way things were 100 years ago to 50 years ago to 10 years ago, things have been changing, and less we're resembling really ourselves. Um, and I just think it's an important note to make, uh, because when we talk about being black, being black has to mean something more than the skin color. Even there's a wide range of skin color for black people, or people considered black people of color, and so on. There's a wide range of skin color, wide range of hair textures, right? Wide range of eye colors. Um, the skin, like you say, beauty is only skin deep. Skin, only goes so deep. It's what's inside that really determines the type of person you are. And right now, what's determining the type of person we are? It's what we're seeing on TV. It's what we're learning at school. It's what we're hearing in our music. It's what The different trends that are happening in the society is dictating the politics, the science, um, all these things, which all are controlled by people who, let's just say, they have a particular agenda, and that agenda is not for us to be the best we can be, and certainly not to be in the image of our ancestors, who our ancestors were before they were captured and brought over here. I had a very interesting, what I thought was an interesting thought. One of these, you know, when I was much younger, first learning about slavery and the slave trade and how many people were captured and brought over here, um, I had this idea, like, why didn't the African countries or the African people send their armies back over here to try to rescue our ancestors? Um, Maybe at the time it wasn't feasible. Maybe at the time they didn't really know what was happening. Or, whatever you might say. I don't really want to try to explain that or understand it. But what I can say now is this. What Master Naba did by bringing the Earth Center here to create a gateway for us to learn about ourselves, to learn about our ancestors, our culture, and how to really be ourselves according to how our ancestral cultures understood it. To me, that represents the rescue mission that finally was sent by our people to bring us back. And I understand why it couldn't happen through warfare. It has to happen through enlightenment. It has to happen through education. Now finally is the time that people can kind of understand the value of where our ancestors are coming from, because you see clearly the destructive path that we're on in our modern society, in American, European, or whatever, the predominant cultures or societies, or whatever you want to call them, groups of people who are leading us towards our demise. And we say, maybe we don't want to be a part of it. There's lots of ways that we kind of end up trying to protest, trying to move in one way or another towards something different. But a lot of it ends up being kind of experimental. Why not try something that we know has worked for humanity for a very, very, very long time? And that's what the Earth Center brought. And so I really, through this One People documentary series, I want to really shed some light on the value of these ancient traditions that still apply to us today. It's not something that's obsolete. It's not something that's outdated. It's not something that's ancient history where you can say, oh, it's 2019, that doesn't apply to us anymore. I'm really not going to get into that today. I just wanted to share with you all a little bit about the history of this One People project and what it's about. It's about unity between us here, descendants of those who were captured and forcefully brought over here from Africa, or maybe some of our ancestors too were already here, captured and made enslaved. All those ancestors have roots and origins, and we know those oldest origins. We still trace them back to Africa. So those African traditions are the oldest traditions that are known to mankind, that somehow survive the longest, that somehow led humanity towards enlightenment, towards spiritual evolution, and very importantly, survival itself, which now we don't know if how we're going to survive another 50 to 100 years. Um, so I'm just suggesting let's return to what works. And so that's what this One People project is about. That's a little bit of the history, the background. And, moving forward, we'll be getting into some more detailed aspects of the culture. So hopefully, uh, those of us who haven't had the exposure to what those traditions are about and only been exposed mostly to like what the TV is telling us, what the media is telling us um, about all the bad things that's happening here and there in the motherland, can have a fresh perspective on things. So that's what I have today. Again, this is the Black Present. My name is Kasabez Makma, and thanks for watching. Take care.